Whenever you're
Count me in, Samuel. Count me in.
Oh, it's already going. It's
Oh,
already recording.
we're waiting for Sam to count us in. Our lovely producer over here, and he did not do his job. All right, Sam. So we're going to talk about you a little bit. It's Ryan Gibson here with our podcast. We'll start again. It's Ryan Gibson here with our podcast titled "I'm Sorry." ... And today's ... is replaced with "I'm sorry, I'm a man." So we want to dive deep into this conversation about masculinity, manhood, toxic masculinity, all of it. We want to have a conversation about what it is to be a man in this world, what the struggles are from a male perspective. And joining me to help get into this deeper conversation is the star of television, #1 show, Yellowstone, Mr. Denim Richards. He's back again, everybody. Writer, producer, director, author, soon to be on stage. We're going to get him everywhere. Mr. Richards, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited. This is one of my favorite topics.
I'm trying to tell you.
Because
He got stoked up, guys.
Yeah, I was so excited.
The moment we said, "Okay, I'm sorry, my man," he's like, "I want to do. I want to come back.
I want to do that one.
I want to
do
come back."
that one too.
So we're happy that he came back. He's like, "I want to do that one too." He's like, so he said, "I'm staying." So we're happy to have you. So let's get into it. So as always, you know how we're big on the definition of things. What are the meaning of things, so that we're all speaking the same language. So we looked up the definition of man. So here's what the dictionary says the definitions of man are: an adult male human being, a human being of either sex, a person, a personnel, person at work, run or operate a place, hold on guys, a place for a piece of equipment, or defend or fortification. So when we think of man, this is what it's defined as, an adult male human being, being of either sex. And I think a lot of us really relate as men to the idea that, is a man a noun or is it a verb? Is it the action? Is it the thing, the person, place, or thing? Or is it an action that we have to perform to be a man? Is it simply having a penis? I mean, in this world of people making different choices about how they define themselves, and in terms of men, women, these become more increasingly interesting conversations to have. But for the point of what we're going to get into, let's dive into this idea of what is it to be a man? What do you think what is your definition, your connotative definition of that, Denim?
Yeah, I mean, some of those things that you said, especially once you started getting to the bottom, like the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of like man is like protector, provider. Those are like the two. People can argue, and the reason why I feel like this is such an interesting topic of conversation, because I feel like based on everybody's experience in life, either with a man or without a man, that kind of definition is going to differ.
Yep.
But for me personally, when I think of man, I think protector and provider, and that at the core of what a man is supposed to do, he's supposed to be able to do those two things while also being a leader, right? And when you start to really identify that, what's really interesting as when you look at from your grandparents to your parents and now to this generation, what that even has looked like and how that's kind of morphed. Yeah. Right. And now, depending on where you go in the world, or depending on what you say, if you say, I'm a protector, I'm a provider, I'm a leader, then I'm toxic.
That part.
Right.
We'll get there.
And so that's a very interesting thing, because one of the big words that I'm using right now is like desired outcome. So anytime we're talking about a conversation, like what is the desired outcome? Right. So when we're dialoguing, when you're saying that something is a toxic male or that I'm a man, what is the desired outcome that we're wanting to accomplish with identifying
this conversation?
That? Yeah.
Well, I think it's getting to a place where we can agree that men or manhood or the definitions thereof have become clouded or shrouded. Look, I was saying to some people earlier, I was like, I recognize that as men or the men of history have done some horrific things to this planet and to women and to this, to society. And I think that it almost feels like the societal needle is trying to balance and it's skewing so far the other way. But in doing so, you inadvertently almost ostracize, just based on the world that we're in, a man for just being. You know, you immediately become targeted. Now, for me, when I think of my definition of manhood, is probably more rooted in the person, place, or thing. It's being a father. It's as you said, being a protector, being a defender, being the person within the family that all persons can come to.
Yeah, like an anchor.
And the anchor, that's a great word.
Yeah.
Being the anchor. It's less about anything that you need to go do. You know, I think a lot of people tie it up with, well, you got to have a job and you got to, and I said, but there are a lot of dudes that we've all known who have a job, but are they a man? Are they doing anything that would define them as a man other than going to work? Are they taking care of the kids? Are they helping? Are they a helpmate to their spouses or girlfriends or boyfriends or whatever the situation is? What is it that they're doing that's adding value, as you like to say, adding value to the space? That makes that definition feel like it makes sense.
So let me ask you, like for you, because it's like the I'm Sorry podcast,
Yes,
right?
yes,
and
sir.
so when we say, you know,
Tongue in cheek,
I'm sorry, I'm a man, right? You know, for you, what do you feel you almost apologize for, right? In that, and
I hear that.
And I feel like that's a great kind
And
of
a space to
open
dive
the
over.
door, and then because I feel like right behind that becomes the toxic male conversation,
it's coming.
which undoubtedly
I feel
we're
it.
going to get into.
I can hear it. I can hear it.
Right,
walking up the street.
You know, what do you feel like as a man? Is there something? Do you have a specific situation or scenario where you felt like I'm operating in whatever my manhood is, and now I'm having to apologize for essentially just feeling like a butterfly, you know, like
the transformation. Well, I think for me, I think that when I realized that I had been existing in a space where I was putting everybody else first, but that was a learned behavior. My mother taught me that, not necessarily by words, but by actions, because she would do it. She put everyone else seemingly ahead of her and took care of herself if she did last. And I saw that with the men that were in and around the cousins, the uncles, and then later the stepfather, those things that came into the space. So when I was married and I had, 3 kids, one of the things when the day I woke up to the reality that it's okay to put myself first. That putting myself first doesn't mean I'm putting anyone else last or second or anything. It just simply means, as they tell you on the airplane, make sure you put on your mask first, so that you can breathe.
Right.
And I remember sitting the day and saying to my now ex-wife that I was ready to make that a real thing and put the words into action, and specifically asked for what it is I felt that I needed at the time from her. And, again, I don't try not to beat her up, because everybody was trying to do the best they can with the situation. And I have my perspective, and I'm sure she has hers. But she didn't necessarily agree with the direction I wanted to go. And her actions spoke loudly.
Why do you feel like it's harder for men to
put themselves first?
Yeah, because it's not like we don't think about it.
No,
right?
We think about it and then we put it away.
About it, right? So then what is
because we're told, I think because then it becomes narcissistic, and that's recent.
Right.
I think before that, it was just society said, you're not supposed to. And that if we go back to like the 50s and the 60s, not even so much the 60s, because things started to shift a little bit. But let's go like the 30s, the 20s, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s in America. We're looking at, because that's the experience I can speak from.
Right.
My understanding of that time was you went to work, you came home, you had your dinner, you went to sleep, you went to work, you came home, you had your dinner, you went to sleep. So there was a very simple pattern. Uniformed until you died.
Right.
And then people would be like, he was a great dad. He was a great provider. And that became the story of your life.
The standard, yeah.
But then somewhere along the way in the 60s, people started to ask deeper questions. Is this all there is? Is there more? Women wanted to get into work. All of these things started happening. Now, if you jump forward into the 2000s, the same thing happened again, where all of a sudden now people are not staying in jobs like they used to. There was a time when you started a job and you were there till you became till
you retired.
Till you retired.
Yeah.
And most of the times people would get promoted up to the highest position they could possibly be, or they just whatever. They would just live.
It's stereotypical. Like you can go into a job as a janitor and leave as a manager.
And leave as a manager.
Yeah.
And you just stay there until it was done, and you know the whole run of the place until it shuts down. Those days seem to have passed, at least periodically, because everything's cyclical, so it'll probably come back around. So you know that at this point right now, nobody is trying to stay. They'll go into a place, they'll try it, dip your toe in, dip your whole foot in, and if it doesn't feel right, they'll transition out of that into something else.
So let me. It's interesting because you grounded part of the conversation now in the looking at from the U.S. perspective. And so I want to look at it from the other perspective, like being here on the continent, right? And that identification of a male and what that looks like in the context of like the Bantu family, right? And what's really interesting, and you even see this in the U.S. especially when you get into like from the 1800s, 1900s, when you're getting into the transatlantic slave trade and when you're getting into slavery in general.
Right.
When you look at part of this struggle for some men was that you didn't have the economic opportunities, the access that other male counterparts around you that didn't look like you would have.
Very true.
Right. And so like in the US, we had what they call like redlining. Right. And so for those that are listening that don't know what redlining is essentially saying that we have this area of land that we're cultivating for, a neighborhood to be a suburban type of neighborhood. Everyone will be able to essentially afford this place. I think back in like the 30s, the 20s and 30s, it would be like your 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom house. Your starter home was like $10,000 US dollars. It didn't matter if you were black or white. You had $10,000. Everyone could afford that house. But what they said was, no, if you're black, you don't get to have access into that space. This is a white only space to be able to do that. But what you guys can do is we have these amazing apartments over here, and you guys can all stack in there and live in there. And this was what bred what we call the projects, right? And so now all of a sudden, when you're looking at the economic opportunities, right, from that one perspective, it's you had this $10,000 that you could, as a man, I can go in, put this in. Now what I can do is I can refinance my own home in a couple of years, pull the equity out of that home. Now maybe I bought it for $10,000. Now it's $30,000. And now I can send my kids to school. Now I can pay for life insurance. Now if you're the black man in that time, what do you do with the $10,000? When you can't get into all these other areas, there are no banks. And so the same thing, very much so, like in places here on the continent as well, where you see a lot of that types of influence, right? That has come from there, where it's you grow up, you're into farming, you know agriculture, you know those types of things, but you also don't have the economic access to expand, right? You're not gonna get the banking loans. You're not gonna get if you do get land, you're not gonna get land that has water under it, right? So there's all of these different elements that then I believe starts to play on the psyche of a man as well, that then sits there and goes, I am sorry that I'm a man, because by being a man, inherently everything becomes 1,000 times harder, right? And let alone being a man and a man of color, good luck, right? And so there's this term like in the US saying like you were born behind the 8 ball, right? So if you play pool, if you have it behind the 8 ball, it means that you just don't have a shot, right? And so I think the same thing over here on the continent, which is now we're seeing what that generation has now bred, because you had people that wanted to work, that want to provide for their families, that want to do that. But then when they look around, they're going, I can't do anything with this. How do I scale? I have to either join the system, which then means I have to either like go and fight for my country and whatever that means. And like the great James Baldwin used to say, like you would, in the US, you had a whole bunch of soldiers that were going and fighting for a country that wasn't even fighting for them, right? Also that they could feel like they were a part of something. And I think that's something that's very interesting to kind of also draw those parallels, because I mean that's where we came from anyways. We came from here to go to the US.
Well, if you go all the way down that rabbit hole and utilize, because you talked about the slave trade, and I love that you mentioned it, because in terms of historical relevance to the psyche of maleness in the United States, black maleness in particular, we're talking about people who were made to feel super less than, obviously, because you were a slave. And then you were watched as your children, your wife, whatever, your daughters
was taken advantage of,
sold, raped, whatever, sometimes in front of you in horrific manner.
And you couldn't do anything.
And that and then that led to, of course, the tremendous physical abuse that then became that a lot of black men ended up visiting upon their spouses during that time.
Right.
Because you had all this pain and this anger that you didn't know what to do with.
Right.
And all this frustration. And I don't know that generational trauma has ever been really addressed. And maybe we should definitely do a podcast on generational trauma to really get into that conversation, because I think that that's a super important topic.
Yeah, because it's the most understated. It's one of the most understated things, I think, right? Because are things that you inherently have in your DNA.
Yes.
Because you are your ancestors,
Yes.
right? And you have these certain things, and sometimes it's not that you are learning something, it's that you're remembering something. Right?
Yes.
And so I definitely think that that's a super needed conversation to travel down
dive
as well.
down because I think it's true across the board. We're not just talking about the United States. We're also talking here,
Right.
And all the pains and the struggle. Those traumas don't go anywhere,
Right.
Like I had a whole breakdown with someone when I was talking about how if you look at everything in a 10-year interval, then we're talking about black people in the United States were marginalized, brutalized, victimized for 300 years, and then supposedly freed. But everybody thinks that the freedom happened and everything got great. Everything did not get great, because after the freedom, the racism was still there, the anger was still there, the frustration was still there, and the opportunities were not.
Right.
And then you keep pushing forward and you watch. And I said, I was born in the 70s. So I immediately go, I am a child of post 10 years before.
Prior.
We were just told that we could be.
It's Malcolm, it's Martin.
The amendments came through.
Right.
It's Malcolm, it's Martin, it's JFK, it's all these guys who are making these strides for this equality. That's 10 years before.
Right.
We're talking about still living and eating and breathing that pain. So I said, we came out of a PTSD situation. So we are the PTSD generation, those children of the 70s and early 80s. And then you come into the 90s and the 2000s, and those kids, all of a sudden, all of them want to act like they woke. I'm like, you're not woke. You're post-PTSD generation. It's the generation that's coming now. The ones in the latter part of 2020s or the early part of 2020s, they're the ones who are now coming out of, in my opinion, a space of wakefulness.
So let me ask you a question with that for like the wakefulness, because my question is, as a man, what do you feel like is the responsibility that you should be teaching to this next generation? The reason why I say this is because I feel like there's a couple of traps that have been emotionally set, societally has been set, where we've experienced a tremendous amount of trauma and things of that nature. But then as you start to move into this next generation, it then seemingly becomes, let's just forget all of that
and pretend it didn't
start
happen.
over and start over from scratch.
It's not realistic.
And you know, it's a tough place to be in, because you can then say, well, you yourself weren't a victim of those things.
But that's
right.
That's the lie. Because I know that, for instance, like I have two boys, and they are currently 8 and 11. And immediately in my mind, there's a bit of terror, insecurity about their futures in the United States. I look at when they were killing people, black men in particular, left and right, getting shot left and right. A couple summers back, and it would just seem like police officers or whoever it was like open season. And I remember speaking to my father-in-law, ex-father-in-law, who grew up, he was born in like the 50s, so he had a completely different experience of being a man in that world. He's the kind of person I was talking about before who got a job as the janitor,
right,
and worked his way up to become one of the highest positions you can get without being appointed,
right,
in the EPA. So I was like, environmental protection agency.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow. And he made sure that he paid it forward and paid it back, opening doors for a number of people of color. Because when they had his retirement, when he retired, it was on a Thursday, and they rented a hall, and there were at least 1,000 people that came, and every single one of them kept walking up to me and said the same thing: what this man did for them, how many opportunities they got. He opened the doors. He got them their first job. All these things. But I digress. But when I was talking about with my sons is trying to figure out how do I express to them in a way that doesn't generate my fear.
Yeah, you can't project.
And project that onto them,
right,
for their future.
Right.
About how it has been.
Right.
Because how it has been does not mean it will be.
Right.
But how it has been is an indicator of how it might be.
Right.
So I wanted to make sure that I prepared them.
Right.
But how do you prepare the next generation without bringing your own insecurities, your fear? So I remember calling him, and he very calmly was like, I get it. He's like, I turn on the TV and I see what's happening, and you can't be anything but terrified at the prospect that maybe you're going to send your kid to the store and somebody's going to come back and tell you that he just got shot because they mistook the candy bar in his hand for a gun. That these things, and that used to be something that if you said, people would thought it was laughable. But it's so real, especially from an American perspective, because it's happened.
Right.
And it will continue to happen. So, but without having a whole conversation about that part of it, the thing that I haven't had the conversation yet with them, but the thing I will say to them when I do have the conversation is about their calmness, their steadiness, and this might be all part of the maleness of it all.
Right.
Finding a space where you can feel safe and secure within yourself to stop, listen to what's being asked of you by the authority figure that might be in front of you. If a weapon is pointed at you, immediately get down on the ground. Yeah, this is not a joke. This is about, like you said, what's the outcome? I want you to get home.
And what's interesting with that is, you were saying something about like not projecting the past right onto the, but I look at it also and from another perspective, potentially from, if I go into the bank and I want to open up an account, they ask me for my financials.
Yeah.
They ask me for things from the past.
True.
Because the things from the past are going to directly affect and impact whether they're making a decision or not.
Whether we're giving you this credit card.
If you're going to invest in a business, you're asking the business that you're going to invest in, hey, give me your last years, give me your this. So for me, I'm like, well, every other industry in the world, when they want to actually be successful potentially or invest or do something, the same way if you're dating somebody, you want to know about like, hey, what's your past? What's your relationship like with your parents? These are things, it's because it's informing them about what it is that I'm getting into.
Yeah.
And part of them being in this world, they need to be informed about the things that have come from, because that's very, very empowering. And I feel like as a man, the goal then becomes, yes, it's not about necessarily the projection. It's not sensing that it's coming from a place of fear.
Yeah.
Because if I fear for you, then I don't ever want you to go anywhere.
Facts.
But if I can empower you and say, hey, look, based upon this information, maybe it's not the best idea to stay out at the club until 4 o'clock in the morning and then drive home.
That part.
Maybe. Based off of this, and this. So using that type of information to just help them be better informed about places that we should go, things that we may be doing, people, even clothing that we should be wearing. And we can make the argument, well, no one should tell me what I want to do. But look, if you're in the U.S., again,
if you're wearing the supposed outfit of what they're considering to be gangsta, then I don't,
But also check this out.
It becomes
also at the
problematic,
same time, it's also becomes
terrible.
As men, I look at it as well as like, do we even love ourselves? Because like you can look at a place like Chicago where black on black crime is happening every single day,
right
every
now,
weekend,
right
right?
now, yep.
70 more people, black, and that's black on black crime, right? So
that's a function of what you talked about earlier. It's the redlining. It's putting all these people in
so that's
place.
what I'm saying. So there's so many, and that's what I'm saying. As a man. You're, no matter what situation or scenario you're in, there's a lot of information that you need to understand and understand what you're dealing with, right? There's a Bantu proverb that when two brothers fight, a stranger inherits the land. And it's very much a big thing here where family members will fight over a piece of land and this, and then all of a sudden nobody owns the land, and then somebody from the outside comes in and says, well, we'll just take it off your hands, right? Because number one, we're always fighting because we don't really respect each other. Yeah. We also, either whether it's based off of society or based on the way that we were raised, we also don't see ourselves as being valuable. We ourselves as men don't see ourselves as being valuable. And so because of that, we don't operate in that value. And then we essentially just sell everything to the highest bidder. Yeah. Everything becomes about how do we then essentially we're mortgaging hard assets for medicine. For coping mechanisms, right? I'm willing to sell my land so I can take that money and go to a club, buy alcohol, a numbing agent,
and turn up.
Do all of these different, this whole YOLO thing, right? That was
you only live once. Let's go.
A systematic situation that was implanted in society to then essentially let people off the hook for not thinking about the future.
Yeah.
And that's part of the issue for me when it comes to man. When I think about that's what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be thinking, you're supposed to be a master planner. And a lot of us, we're so caught up in the now of everything and the fear of now that we're not even thinking about
what does tomorrow look like? Yeah.
But so what's the point of having a conversation with my kids about, hey, this is what life is going to look like. But what are you doing right now to even set me up
for the future,
for something like that?
No, I can hear that. It's tough, especially as they get older and you watching them go out into the world and become more young men. It's super terrifying, which is one of the reasons I want them to have a worldview greater than the U.S.
Their situation. Yeah. And also because they are growing up so quickly because they're so exposed to so many different things at levels that when I was younger, I wasn't even thinking about.
At all.
Right now, there's questions and conversations that are being brought up that you're like,
toxic
why don't you
masculinity.
Just worry about going outside and falling out of a tree.
But
like,
toxic
why are you
masculinity.
concerned about this?
Let's talk about the toxic masculinity because we brought it up. The toxic masculinity, as you say, these are the things that are coming up in conversations with them. So I went down the rabbit hole of the toxic masculinity space today because I was like, I want to know.
Right.
I want to understand. I want to understand, as you say, overstand and try to stand in this space to get a clearer sense of what is it. Because I think, at least I thought I knew what it was connotatively. But when I looked at the definition, I was like, huh? So you guys, here we come. So here's dictionary definitions of toxic masculinity. A set of attitudes and ways of behaving stereotypically associated with or expected of men, regarded as having a negative impact on men and on society as a whole. That's one. Refers to the notion that some people's ideas of manliness perpetuates domination, homophobia, and aggression. That's two. It involves pressures for men to behave in a certain way, and it is likely that this affects all boys and men in some fashion. So the first one, just on the first one, a set of attitudes and ways of behaving stereotypically associated with or expected of men. So when I stopped there at the comma, and it is a comma, I immediately was like, huh? A set of attitudes, it's so vague. It's so vague. And then when you get into the rest of it, regarded as having a negative impact on men and on society as a whole. I feel like somewhere down the line, because I can't tell you how many times I've heard women throw that at somebody and even some dudes throw it at themselves when they're like, somebody saying something that you don't like. Oh, that's just, you keep your toxic masculinity over there. And I'm like, well, what did he say? He didn't come for you. He didn't attack you. He just said something you disagreed with. Right. Or he said something that you think is wrong. Now, I hear all the aggression perpetuates domination, homophobia, and aggression. I get all that. But aren't those things on their own? Right. Don't they have their own tranche? Don't they have their own space? Right. Why are we, it feels like how
does that get clumped into
it feels like somebody
only a man can
But it feels like somebody made a basket, labeled it toxic masculinity, and threw in everything that they thought they could throw in. Right. And it's a buffet. It's a buffet. Because now you can walk up and you can pick anything out of there and throw it at somebody. Right. The moment somebody walks up, I said to somebody earlier, I said, if I walk into a room and a guy is having an argument with a woman and he says, you know what, you're a trifling bitch. And I go, oh, and then everybody in the room like, oh, toxic masculinity. I'm like, well, is she? Is she trifling? I'm not saying he need to call her a bitch, but is she trifling? Did the behavior that she's doing, would that be considered trifling? Before you guys immediately start attacking him and saying that what he said was, because it may have been wrong, period. But it doesn't always rise to the level of labeling everybody as toxically masculine.
So let me ask you, does it appear at all like, for me at least, it feels, but I want to know what you think, that a lot of these things are really just there so that nobody has to be held accountable for anything because it feels like emotional laziness, right? Because if you look at so many different scenarios, we had a thing like where we talk about, we've talked on and off a lot about when people say they're sorry about something and they use I'm sorry as a blanket statement.
Yeah. And now you're supposed to forgive me.
And now you say I'm sorry and then I'm supposed to use my perception of what sorry is, even though you didn't say it because you just said, so now I'm supposed to fill in all those gaps. And it seems and appears that based off of the definition that you're using, because it is so vague, it's such a blanket thing, which is essentially
it's a catch-all.
Which essentially the definition of toxic masculinity really should just be anything that we decide it is.
Yeah.
At any given point.
Here's another one that's also just as vague. that one of our producers just handed me. A set of attitudes and ways of behaving stereotypically associated with or expected of men. Regarding as having a negative, same thing, regarding, and I'm sitting there going.
So, but let's unpack this. So this is a great question. So let's unpack this. Read the first line again.
A set of attitudes and ways of behaving stereotypically associated with or expected of men.
What is a stereotypical action of a man?
I don't know. So that's what I looked at. I was like, I don't understand what you're saying.
So based off of that, if I'm using what I would call low frequency types of thinking,
facts. Go ahead.
I would say when I heard that, if somebody said like, oh, this is such a prototypical male thing to do, I'm immediately thinking that through the lens of how a lot of women would be like, oh, men are dogs. Right. So
I'm out there cheating.
So you're always chasing
tail,
something.
basically.
You're always chasing a female. You're always doing this. So I immediately looking at it like you're using that to kind of attach it to these tropes. Mm-hmm. The funny thing is, and again, this is just more of a side issue, but it's always funny when they say like, oh, men are dogs. I'm like, dude, dogs are tremendously loyal.
Facts.
Right? Like dogs are the most loyal. So it's like you should find a different trope. But again, that's part of this rebranding of not understanding when you say things, what they actually mean. Yeah. And so what's interesting though, is it feels like it's just a lazy way to not actually have to be in touch with yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you said something that I disagreed with, the easy thing for me to say is like, this is such a toxic male behavior. And then that's it. And I shut you down and I win.
Because immediately I'm sitting here
identify
what the specific,
what it is,
specificity, people.
Then all of a sudden it warrants a conversation.
Yes.
And then it requires a contact and a connection and a deeper understanding. And then that's how you heal.
Yep.
But we have now, I believe, as a society, and when I say as a society, I'm saying that something that universally media entertainment has accepted as okay,
as fact,
right? Not that it's true, but that's what they've accepted. It's really just about, don't worry about being in touch with yourself. We're all too busy. We have to work. We have kids. We have this. We have that. We're too busy to connect with people. So
I'll just simply call you one thing.
We created these
boxes.
There's boxes of things that anytime that you feel like it, because you don't have the time because you're so busy. Here are these microwave types of things
I can
throw at
throw
you.
narcissism at you, and that means everything. It means you only think about you. When in a moment, like I had that thrown at me while in marriage, and I remember when it was thrown at me, it was one of those, because I was going through therapy, and it made me take time and go, "Am I?" That was the question that came to mind when the word was thrown at me. Am I? Let me check it. And I remember I looked up the definition. I already knew it, but I looked it up again just to make sure. You always want to make sure that you know what you know. And when I looked it up, I was like, okay, I wish I was. And that was my response to myself. I wish I was. Because the definition of narcissism is about you being so enamored with self and all that requires and lives within you that you would literally sit next to water and stare at yourself even as death comes and takes you. That you're so focused on you and all things about you. And I realized that is so far from who I am. But for a moment, someone else's definition of me almost became my definition of myself.
Right. And if
when you're doing this, if you don't do the deeper work, you will 100% take it on. And I see young men taking on this toxic masculinity thing. So I don't know how many times I'll hear somebody just lob it. That's some toxic masculine behavior, and they'll just lob it into the room. And everybody's like, and it's
and it's hard, right? Because like you said in the beginning of the conversation, it feels as though that because it's such a microscope over all the things that have happened that men have done, that now it's like you're trying to find this balancing act.
Yeah.
And are you in fear? Are you afraid that it's going too far on the other side?
Yes.
And then what ends up happening, then it becomes this notion that toxic masculinity then starts to really get refined and deduced all the way down to one just having a position.
Yep.
Right. So me just having a position,
having a point of view,
having an opinion.
Yeah. And a steadfast one.
And being grounded and rooted in that opinion.
Yeah.
Can't be respected for being honorable, which is what it used to be. It used to be honorable to know
have a
where
position.
You stood with somebody.
Yeah.
Now it's actually widely recognized as being bad because you're not keeping up with all of the new things that we're throwing out to you all the time. And I'm saying, but that's one of the reasons why a lot of people are running around in almost like as like emotional basket cases because you're never grounded and rooted in anything.
Yeah.
So anytime you pick up your phone and go on social media, you're impacted and you're affected.
Yep.
Anytime you turn on the television, you're impacted and affected. because you're no grounded. You're trying to be this chameleon.
You're a leaf in the wind, and you're being blown every which way.
Loved by everyone, but never creating any more value for yourself. And then at the end of all of it, when you don't have anything, then you're a victim, and then you want to be saved, right? And then it's all about how the world owes you something. And so for me, like as a man, the hardest thing that I had to come to terms with years ago was the world doesn't owe you anything.
Hey, baby.
And the realities for myself was that, yes, life is hard. Wear a helmet. Get over it.
Yeah.
And it's mentally very challenging because you can go through all the myriad of situations that you've gone through, and you do feel like a board game.
Yep.
You feel like my piece is moved all the way around this board, and I'm never passing go.
No, I haven't collected no $200.
And I feel like I'm owed. I feel like I'm owed going to go.
Yeah.
Now when you get into that space of now you feel like you're owed, now you're saying I'm a victim.
Yeah.
So now you're taking ownership of you being a victim.
Yeah.
And now you're going to every single space and saying, I don't care if I add any value or bring any value to this room. The very notion that because I've gone through things, I'm owed something. And so for me as a man, I realized, look, the world doesn't owe you anything.
Yes.
The best thing that you can do for yourself as a man is continue to work on yourself and build value.
Yes.
Certain people that listen to this, you look at, even if everyone knows the scriptures of like Adam and Eve, right? First man, the first woman in that regard. But if you realize that the Most High didn't give Eve to Adam until Adam had finished the task. He had to name all the animals in the garden. He had to till the ground. He had to do all.
He had work to do.
He had work that he had to do. There's a lot of men that are going out running around
and
looking
like,
for
no
an
work,
Eve.
and they ain't putting no work in.
And you haven't named an animal.
Yeah, man.
You haven't planted a seed.
Put to work.
You haven't done any. You haven't cultivated. You haven't tasted the fruit thereof.
None.
But yet you're looking for something, and then you then become upset when you finally get the female and the female has expectations. Because the female's point of view is, why would you come so hard after me if you don't have anything in your basket in the first place?
If you're not super clear about where, or even if you're not clear about where you're going to go.
But you
what's
have,
the next
so
step?
you have to
have something.
So that's where I'm saying that as a man, I think that we have to also be very, very cognizant and aware that if you want to change the definition of a man, then you first have to change it within yourself. And you yourself have to say, what is my definition of a man, and live fully in that.
You got to define you. I was out at the barbershop the other day, get my lineup, get my edge up, and they were talking about, and I started the conversation. I asked the guy who was giving me the barber, Lucky. I was like, hey, what are you looking for out here? What are you looking for in these streets? And he was like, you know. I said, no, I don't know. Tell me, what are you looking for in these streets? And he said, just want a woman who'll be supportive, be there, be a help, and isn't looking for me to fix all their problems. And I was like, okay. And I said, do you know what they're looking for? And he was like, huh? I said, do you know what women are looking for? You're saying this is what you're looking for. Great. Right. What are they looking for? Do you know what that alignment? Is it in alignment with? Do you have a sense of what they're looking for? I said, ask the young lady right there who works in the shop. She comes over, and I asked her, I said, what are you looking for? And she's like, in what? She said, in a man, in a relationship, in what? I said, yeah, okay. So she starts, because I didn't want to lead it.
Yeah.
So I said, go ahead and tell me whatever you heard me say, answer that. And then she started telling me she wanted a man who was, she wanted a man but didn't need a man. That was the big takeaway. But then not a few seconds later, she's talking about how she's dating this guy and she bought him a massage thing to get a massage. And she said that after she said now that he's gotten that, because he's going through something. She said, now I did that for him. Now he'll know what it is he has to do for me and how he has to treat me as a man. And I was like, huh? I said, do you see what you set up?
Oh, goodness.
I said, do you see what you set up? And then therapy session began. And I was like, you're setting up a situation where you're telling this man that his only value is in what he can do for you.
Right.
But you're saying you don't need a man.
Right.
So which is it? Do you need a man? Do you not need a man?
Right.
And if you need one, what do you need one for?
Right.
And then it became a whole down the road, up the block, and that's a different conversation for a different time.
But let's just for a second before we go to the thing. But I think we should unpack that, because I think it is very fascinating. Because when you do look at, okay, for a man, what are you looking for in a woman? And you go to the woman, and then of course, yes. most women, I don't believe, actually hold that point of view. I don't believe
No,
that
I don't
most
believe that
women
either.
say,
Yeah.
I want a man, but I don't need a man. But
Yeah.
I do think it has now become a defense mechanism
Yes.
for themselves, because if they had to admit that they needed a man, then that means they're opening themselves up for the possibility of being let down.
Yeah, and being hurt.
Unfortunately, we haven't seen, it hasn't been reflected. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean that it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It just hasn't been reflected. We don't see on social media all of these male type of providers, men living in their maleness.
Yeah.
Right. When it
in
comes
a
to
way
these women.
in a way that society currently doesn't deem.
So you can't fault the woman.
Yeah.
You can't fault the woman for having that opinion. The problem also becomes, like you were saying, it's like that you're now saying that the only value that he has is what he can do for you. But then even more so, you're now telling him, love me the way that I want you to love me. But you're not, what about the way that he wants to
be
love
loved?
you?
Yeah.
And what about the way that because now he might be looking at it like, I'm going through a tough time. And man, now this princess has got me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I said that.
And now she got me.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, while he's sitting in his, man, this feels so good because not only am I getting this, but I know that I'm with somebody that's got me.
But the reality
she
of
on
it
the
is,
other end,
when is it?
I hope
When
he
is
loves
when is
every
he?
single bit of this
Yes.
because this is exactly what I expect.
And I expect him to do it. Yes.
so
And when is
you
my turn?
So when
is
you
it
do
my
that
turn?
from that perspective, then the question becomes that I think about how many relationships are started like that. And I say the same thing. It was like when people go, like how many people started a relationship because you guys like the same movie?
Yeah.
Oh, we both like popcorn on our thing and we both like rom-coms. So what does that mean? We're now going to like do this whole life thing together?
Is that going to be the thing?
Because, you know, but again, it becomes this whole notion of not spending enough time with self, understanding self, being honest about what it is that you want from the get-go.
From the
because of
jump.
the fear of if you were to say what you want, then that means that it's a filtering out process.
Yes.
And so what you're essentially saying to me is I actually don't value myself enough.
Right.
I would rather waste my time and waste somebody else's time.
Yes.
To help me discover the things that I don't want.
And I'll tell you, it's funny enough you said that. Literally, the barber next to us overheard the conversation, and I said to him, "Okay, I see you over there listening and laughing and kikiing at what we're saying." I said, "What's your situation?" And he's like, "Yeah, I have a girl." And I was like, "Well, what's your plan with her?" He was like, "No." I said, "Well, how long you been together?" He's like, 2 years. You ain't got no plan? You gonna be with her another 2 years? Are you thinking marriage down the road? What are you thinking? He said, "Oh yeah." And I said, "Do you know what you want out of your life and where you want to go?" He's like, "Yeah." "Does she?" He's like, "Yeah." I said, "So if I put a gun to your head, brought her in here and said, to tell me what you want to do with your life, are you willing to bet that?" And he said, "No, I'm not going to bet my life." And I was like, "Okay." So then what you're really saying is she doesn't know. And whose fault is that? And he was like, I said, "No, I'll help you. It's yours."
Ask the questions even though you're afraid of the answer.
I said, "It's yours.
Yeah.
You have to tell her. And how do you expect her to know?" And I said, "Have you told?" He said, "Well, I've sort of told." I said, "You can't sort of tell somebody
You sort of
anything."
get out of the chair.
I said, "That's part. You can't sort of stand up. You can't sort of do. You either told her or you didn't."
Didn't tell her,
She can't come to you and say, "I'm sort of pregnant." She's either
Right.
pregnant or she's not pregnant.
Right.
So what is it that you need is you need to make sure that you're super clear with her. I said, "What are you afraid is going to happen?"
It's not going to work.
And that's what he said.
That's what
He's
we're
like,
afraid
"I'm
of."
afraid that, I kind of think I know the answer." So then why are you still with her?
So what are we doing?
And I said, and I'm not asking you, I said, I'm not advocating you go break up with anybody. I'm saying I'm advocating you get clarity.
Right.
You go to this woman and you tell her what you want.
Right.
And then you see if that's in alignment with what she wants.
Right.
And if it's not, then y'all have a decision to make. Or adjustments to make.
But at least at the bare minimum,
you have clarity.
We now have a start of a conversation, right?
But it just sounds like to me, and I said this to him, you're just afraid of losing the safety and comfort of the nothingness in which you have.
Yeah, it's called playing house.
Because what you're doing, I said, he's like, "Well, I'm only partially ignorant." I said, partially ignorant is entirely ignorant.
Right.
I said, you can't sort of know.
Right.
You either know or you don't know. And you're sitting in a no. You think it's a maybe. It's not a maybe. I don't do maybe. Maybe means no.
But see, that to me also comes from the rooted fear for him. I'm looking at it from his perspective. It's like, bro, you can't be that insecure.
You can't be that insecure.
Because if you felt like you had value,
yes,
it wouldn't be hard to have that conversation.
To just simply go, hey, because I know that there are more out there.
There's other people.
And no shade on her. It's not the whole.
But we're not. But it's not about. But that's the thing. By having, and that's part of. See, that's part of what toxic masculinity tropes do.
Yes.
That now instead of being rooted in saying something, I have to now quantify.
That
I'm
part.
not talking about everything.
That
If you're
part.
not emotionally
Oh my God,
intelligent
yes.
to understand,
But unfortunately, we still got to.
the dialogue of which that one is having, no one is simply saying that you're not valuable.
That
What
part.
we're simply saying is there's other people that are out in the world that are other men like me. You have other options. I have other options. Why would we then stay together
and waste
lie
each
to
other's time
when you could be out there and
with the,
I might
with the
be
dude you're
keeping
supposed to
you
be with
from the person that you might want to be able to be
Yes.
with? And that's so for me, that's what it comes down to, the definition of things and being very, very clear and honest and being willing to walk away.
That part.
Like it's okay. And
It's okay if it doesn't work.
I do have an idea for a podcast. I was just, while you were talking, I was like, we need to do a podcast called "I'm Sorry, I'm Not Paying Lobola." So here on the continent, here on the continent,
He's gonna explain it. He's gonna explain it.
It's like a major dialogue. As a quick teaser, the reason why it's such a big thing is because there's a lot of couples that have been together that are now cohabitating. Their parents want them to get married, but part of it, they need to pay lobola. But then they feel like the money for lobola, it costs too much.
Right.
So then it becomes, do we stay together and essentially not have the blessings for our families, right? Or do we essentially risk our financial future, which a lot of them feel like they're doing, that we can appease the family and do a thing.
For a traditional
especially
thing.
here on the continent, it's broken up a lot of different relationships as well, and having that conversation, because a lot of people don't understand what the actual true context of lobola is in context of the family, the patriarchies of the family, the lineage of the family. So it's something that
we
will
definitely touch on that, because that's a nice segue. But before we go, I want to just answer, because you guys had questions and you sent us your questions. So we want to dive into a couple of those questions. So Denim, question 1, what does it mean to be a man?
What it means to be a man. Now, after we've had this conversation, to me, more than anything, it's being willing to lead without apologizing, right? So leading without apologizing and taking accountability, even in times and in moments where it might not have anything to do with you.
Yeah. I think for me, it's being able to stand in your truth when other people want to tell you that what you're saying is wrong, and being okay with that knowledge, that what you believe is what you believe, and you don't owe anybody a breakdown of your, like, people always like, oh, I don't understand. And my response is always, your understanding is not required.
Yeah.
It'd be great if you got it.
Right.
But I don't need you to. You know why?
Doesn't move the
Because
needle.
I get it.
Yeah, it doesn't move
And
the
that's
needle.
important. To be able to stand in your truth, to be man enough, as you will say, to stand in your own space and hold it and maintain it, even when everything else around you might be falling apart. But be clear about your direction. It's not easy. Next question. What are some difficulties men go through?
Difficulties men go through I would say,
very blanketed.
In general, it's super blanketed. I would say difficulties that men go through is they struggle with being honest about where they are in life.
Yeah.
That society, there's a lot of love with celebrities and athletes, and they want a certain lifestyle. But sometimes they're not willing to do the work to get to that lifestyle.
All times,
but
not sometimes,
also,
most times.
A lot of people are trying to be happier than happy, and they're always trying to keep up. And the comparison is the thief of joy.
Yep.
And so I would say,
don't look into somebody else's mirror and expect to see your own reflection,
right?
Yeah.
So to me, if there's two major things that are impacting, is number one is being honest with where you are in life, and also having a plan on how you're going to get to this next phase if you want to. And number two, stop searching in places, like don't search in gutters looking for diamonds, right? So you have to find and surround yourself with people that add value to your life. And there's this saying that, if you surround yourself with 5 millionaires, you'll be the sixth. Yeah. So then it becomes, we have to do more than just hanging out and be like, hey, because we can drink together.
Who are you hanging out with?
We're supposed to be kicking it. Like, no, these are not my battle people. So I would say those are some of the things I think a lot of men
find in their difficult.
Struggle with.
For me, I think the biggest thing is emotional maturity, is getting to that space where you understand that you don't understand everything, and that you don't have to have answers for everything, and that you don't always have to be the person in the room who knows what the direction is. Sometimes just understanding that you don't know is just equally as important. Yeah. Because at least that starts the conversation in your mind about what you have to go do, what work you need to put in.
Learn.
But I think a lot of people will come into spaces, and because of lack of emotional maturity, will try to claim something that they don't know that they don't know.
Right.
And live in that space and start talking about it like if they do know, and all they do in that conversation is reveal
that they don't know.
That they don't know.
Yeah.
Better to be thought of as a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt.
Yeah, right.
So do not do it.
Right.
So I think that, and that goes right back to what you said before about taking the time to get to know who you are. Do that work, do the internal work. And I promise you guys, we're going to say that a lot. That is the consistent thing on the I'm Sorry podcast, is that we want people to be doing the work, the real work.
Yeah.
And the real work is not easy. It's difficult. It's hard. Nobody told you. I don't know who told you it was supposed to be easy, what billboard you read it on, what pillow, but this is what it is. And it's not just about men. This is human.
Right.
So you have the work to do, go do it. I have two more questions here.
Yeah.
What does it mean? What does it mean to be man enough?
To be man enough. Again, it's a loaded question.
I know.
right?
It sets up this whole space of, well, how many women have I slept with? You know, what's the notches
Right.
and
I
all
mean,
this? That's the toxicity or whatever.
That becomes, again, that's the low frequency.
That's the low frequency. Yes.
To me, being man enough is understanding that the only person at the end of all of it, out of all of your success or failure, it ultimately has to do with you.
Yeah.
And so it's being man enough to be able to say, if I failed, it's not even that you failed or that I'm still learning, but let's just say I failed, that you're not saying I failed because this happened to me, that person did that to me.
Yeah.
No one cares.
No one
right?
cares.
And that's why I say it's very, very hard for people to identify with success. Everyone identifies with failure.
Yeah.
And so if you can pick up your phone right now and you can call anybody and you can say, hey, this happened to me. I failed. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Call those very same people and say, hey, I'm successful, and see how they can't have anything to offer you with that. Right. So for me, part of being man enough is being able to accept the fact of good, bad, or indifferent. The buck stops with you.
Hey, again, it goes back to the same thing. It's all about the work. It's about the work that you have to do and everything that you need to be doing within that work. For me, being man enough is being able to recognize that you will fall down and it's going to hurt. And you might break a leg, you might break an arm, you might bleed, you might cut, and it might feel like the end of the world. But the reality is, it isn't. You're still here. You still have breath in you. You have to stand up and fight. And I've fallen down more often than I've counted, and almost every single time, it's because of my own choices. So I'm recognizing that and recognizing that those choices that I've made are the direct result of the fall down, but the lesson in the fall down and the lesson in the stand up, the thing that's required to get back up, even when everything in you just says, I just want to lay here and I just want to give up. But to get back up, for me, that is when you show your manliness. When you in a divorce or breakup or lose a job or loss of someone that you care about, and you are at your lowest point that you've ever been, that's when you show who you are. That's where character is revealed. It's revealed through action. What are you prepared to do? How are you prepared to do it? And then what comes? I remember you told the story before, but I remember it was a particularly rough time in my life. I had been working as a production assistant for a number of years in the entertainment business of entertainment, and I had to take another job as a production assistant. And I had been a writer on some projects, and I had to take this job because I needed a job. So I took this job working on a particular show. We won't say Curb Your Enthusiasm, but I took the job, and it was great. They did nothing. It was a great opportunity. I learned a lot on that type of a show. I'd never worked on something like that. But this particular day, it just felt like I had nothing left. It felt like everything, like I was looking around and it felt like I was stuck. Like I was still a PA. I felt like I'd gone full 360 back to the beginning of the journey. And it was so hurt. And they sent me on a run in my car. And people say it doesn't rain in Southern California. Lies. It was raining dogs, cats, and every other animal. And I'm driving down the street and going in traffic, LA traffic, on a lunch hour. And it took 3 hours just to get to where I had to go, pick up the package. And then it took 2.5 hours to get back. So when I finally got back, I pulled into the parking lot and it stopped raining. And the rain stopped then. And I remember I couldn't get out the car. I opened the door and I just sat there and I couldn't get out the car. And I wanted to talk to somebody. I needed to talk to somebody. I needed somebody to tell me that something good was happening somewhere.
Yeah, you're doing something.
And I picked up the phone. I called my mother. She didn't answer. My sister, she didn't answer. My boy, he didn't answer. My roommate, he didn't answer. I called everybody that I could think of. And then finally I called my younger brother, who I don't usually call in these situations, as the older brother.
Yeah.
And then I called him. He answered. And I said, hey, what's going on? He was like, what's going on with you? And I just said, just tell me something good. And he was like, what's going on? He said, you okay? And that one question broke me. And I'm crying, sitting in the car, crying, like, crying, like all the way in crying. And I couldn't figure out what had gotten in me. But it was this feeling that I had placed on myself of my not enoughness, that I wasn't enough right where I was because I was not where I thought I should be. And I think a lot of men suffer from the not enoughness. And in that moment, I had to let it go. And it was not easy. But I had been doing some soft work. And in that moment, I was able to see myself and go, you know what? This is the work. What I'm doing here, this job, I'm not giving up. I'm going to keep fighting. I'm going to keep pushing. This is a bad day and it's okay. It's okay if I have a bad day. Everybody has a bad day. What do I do now? And I said, I'll give you permission, talking to myself, to have a bad day. Go ahead. Have the pity party, revel, let it happen. And I walked back into work, feeling horrible, sat in it. And by the end of the day when I left, all of that had left. And by the next day, I went out and auditioned for a job and got it. And ended up leaving Curb shortly after. But I was like, if I had given up in that moment, nothing happens. And I think too many men get beat down by the world and society and the emotions, and now we have toxic masculinity to top on top of it. You know, all of these energy coming at you, they make you feel like it's not worth the effort. Like, what am I fighting for, and for whom am I fighting? And my response is, you. You're fighting for you. People think you got to be fighting for the wife or the kids. And I said, you should be always first on your list. Put on your own mask first. How can you breathe and attempt to help anybody if you can't breathe? Rather, if you don't put your mask on, how do you take in air? Who can you help? Who can you be support of? So you need to stand in your truth and be able to know it's hard, it hurts, but I can. That's why you were given broad shoulders. Yeah, that's why you can stand back up and fight and push. And I promise you, the rain don't last always. And it always gets better. At some point, it will get better. But it won't if you stay where you are. And then the final question is, do you think you can list at least one societal expectation of men, either negative or positive?
Well, of course.
Yeah, give one to the world.
So, a positive and a negative?
Positive. If you have both, go for it.
Well, I'll stay with the positive. I think there's enough.
Yeah, let's go positive.
Channels that can
that part.
The negative. There is depending on where you are in life, there's still a great expectation for men to be great leaders. Depending on who you're talking to in this society. But for me, I still really appreciate those that still want men to be men in that way that our grandparents knew what that was. And that's still something that I hold on to because I feel like it's easy to fail. It's easy. I feel like it's really easy to fail, to give up, to quit, to make excuses. But man, is it really, really challenging to not make excuses, to continue to grind and to continue to push. And so when you have people that you can be around, surrounded by, or even jack into occasionally that still say like, hey, we still have expectations for you to be great. That still means a lot. I don't take it as pressure, because it means like pressure makes diamonds. So I just pressure's really, a privilege, so I really appreciate that. But I would say that in certain areas that there still is a need and a want for men to really be what it is that they were before in a little bit more of the traditional setting of that protector and that provider, that somebody that when there's a breakdown in society, who's going to be on the front lines of that breakdown of society, right? When it comes time to do all the heavy lifting, when your back is against the wall, who are you expecting to do that? As a man, I don't expect a woman to have to hold down. We have so many responsibilities that we already want a woman to do anyways, and you want her to do all these other things
and
unnecessarily.
Lift up the couch.
That's too much. So for me, I would say that that's something that is still, it's positive for me to know that I still have people that still want that type of leadership, that type